Okay, so before we start, let's take a moment to ourselves, just to ingather. So I think we have to start from here, page number 24. Yes, our illnesses tests in the yoga. Yes. So anyone who feels ready to read it out aloud for us.
Can do it.
Yes, please.
Are illnesses test in the yoga? Test? Not at all. You are given an illness purposely to make your progress. Surely it is not like that. That is, you may turn it round and say that there are people whose aspiration is so constant, whose goodwill is so total, that whatever happens to them, they take as a trial on the path to make progress. I knew people who, whenever they fell ill, took it as a proof of the divine grace to help them to progress. They told themselves, it is good sign. I am going to find out the cause of my illness and make the necessary progress. I knew a few of this kind, and they advances magnificently. There are others, on the contrary, who, far from making use of it, let themselves fall flat on the ground. But the true attitude when one is ill is to say, there is something wrong. I am going to see what it is.
Thank you. So any reflection? Mhm. So I think this attitude that mother is telling is very beautiful attitude to have, because then everything is secondary. All the circumstances of life, whether it is illness or outward situation where one is, maybe struggling with a relationship, workplace, anything, anything then is secondary, because what one is considered about, what is prior is, okay, let me see what life or what the body is trying to tell me. So it's like a curious explorer kind of an attitude, where I think always one can keep progressing, learning, unlearning, and all the situations then, even the bodily situations are very secondary. They are not the primary thing that, oh my God, what has happened? Not like that. So if something has happened, it's like a scientist kind of an attitude that, okay, let me find out why it is happening or what did I do, what was the movement. So that we become more and more conscious of our inner world. Each thought, each feeling, each uh, idea in the mind, it kind of goes in front of our eyes. We are not oblivious to it if we take this attitude. So I think it's a beautiful attitude if one can have, or maybe if one does not have already, to cultivate such an attitude that through every situation we are just trying to find out, okay, I'm going to see what it is, just looking at whatever the situation is, knowing it closely, intimately, and then things are somehow, falling in place. So this is really nice. Anything else, anyone?
Yeah, I think like this can be true for each and every suffering, right? That we are given. That either I just sit and cry about it, right? That it is happening to me, it has happened to me, which is the slippery slope, right? Eh, Like, I did interact with a few amputation cases while I was doing my undergraduation, in which, say, one person, even if it's like, okay, the amputation happened 5 years ago, and yet the person is still, it's so he hasn't yet accepted that it has happened. And when you're giving him therapy, he's like, but I don't know how that happened, why it happened, what do I do, why is God so unkind, kind of a thing. And his progress is hardly there, right? Because he's still so much in his grief. And while there's somebody else who's just, I don't know, been less than 2 months, and he's like, okay, it's done. Now what do I do? Tell me, what can I gain? What are the ways that I can now live? How can I gain that function, this function, and stuff? So we have the whole spectrum, right? When we look around, we have these examples, we have so many inspirations as well as the everyday things we see. So it's not new that it is there, that whatever comes my way, I can use it as a stepping stone, as a way to progress, or I can sit and cry and say, and that too is part of the grieving process. So that crying is also important, and yet for how long do I want to cry? That too one needs to see. Again, how they say a miserable life, an aimless life is a miserable life. So again, everything again and again, it feels boils down to, do you have an aim that you can work towards? Because then it just makes it easier for you, right? That okay, this something, 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 and when nothing is making sense, and yet you have that aim, then things again have to make sense to go in that direction. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. And I think last time we were also discussing that maybe it was not the same context, that sometimes it seems that some people naturally have a positive, right attitude, and one may feel that why don't I have it and not do anything much about other cultivating it. So what we were talking is that even in this lifetime, what we see, if some people have it naturally, if the right attitude comes naturally to them, it's not that they have not worked on it, because we know that we go through lifetimes of a process. So to realize that the work needs to be done. So whether I can start right now, now I notice that my attitude is giving me problems, and There are inspirations around, as you were sharing, in day-to-day life, we have inspirations around. And can I now begin the journey of cultivating the right attitude in order to learn from every what was pointed at the situations that are presented to me in life, or either to crib about it and complain and be in that misery. Yeah, absolutely. And I think with that kind of attitude, somehow, if we try to cultivate it, uh, somehow it brings back, no matter how challenging life is, which to everybody it is challenging in some or other way, but still there is a certain joy in life, because as mother says, progress brings joy. So whenever I shift anything little within, it brings joy. And again, you are self-motivated, like nobody else has to poke you. At times, poking may be required, but in general, like one is self-motivated because one sees that there is progress, one is learning, unlearning, and all the things. Yeah. So this is really nice. I think just to read it again also that as mother says that there are people whose aspiration is so constant, whose goodwill is so total that whatever happens to them, they take it as a trial on the path to make progress. So as you were pointing at that not only in terms of diseases or bodily functions, but also generally, otherwise the usual outlook is as if something happens to me, I look, okay, who am I to blame now? Which is the person I should blame for this situation? What is the life situation I can blame? Can I blame life? Can I blame universe? Can I blame my past? So we are always looking for something to kind of put our misery on, that you are responsible for my misery. But then there, that progressive attitude right away is not there. While if anything happens, and if I can say, okay, this happened, and what can I learn through this situation? Then somehow there is joy along with all the trials that may be there. Yeah.
Even say movies about illnesses, right? Like say, I don't know, one the very famous one, Forrest Gump, an old classic. Like it's not about what's happening, right? It's about how I'm taking it. How I'm saying that, no matter what the world is saying, doctor and we have instances when the doctors have said, okay, this child will never walk, this child will never talk, he might not live for more than a year. And yet the strength of the parent, the caregiver, is so strong. The faith is so strong, even if it's not, very obviously spiritual or religious. And yet that thing that no, he will walk, or no, I'll it has to be. There is no other way. The motivation of humankind, kind of, it's so beautiful. And we, again, just like it really depends on me. And again, that's also great, right? That how I can take it, like you were discussing, that some people naturally seem to have it while others don't. But like everything else, if we can aspire and pray and, for grace to even be able to have that zeal and faith, it's beautiful. Just,
Yeah. I feel it's a kinder way also, somehow because um, when I blame either myself or outer situation or a person for anything, then as if I'm torturing myself and the other person or the situation. But when I don't want to put any blame on anybody, neither on myself nor on anybody, then the only thing that can happen is learning. So I think if it feels like it's far more kinder to myself and also to other people around if this attitude can be cultivated. And also, I relate it with how we read about scientists who were genius in their own accord, in their own fields. We see that many a times we come across this that they were very focused on learning about their field. All that matters to them is, okay, what can I, understand of my field through this situation. So there, it's like a childlike innocence that you are only concerned about learning and making things perfect and making your theory perfect if you're working with the theory or anything. So it also brings like a childlike innocence where you don't want to put anyone blameworthy, either not you, not other things. The only thing that is in front of your eyes is, okay, how to make this thing perfect, how to grow through it, how to learn through it. So that I think really is a kinder approach. It feels that no one is burnt in the process consciously. Mm. So this about these people who have, mother says that who can have the right attitude. I knew people whenever they fell ill took it as a proof of the divine grace to help them progress. Amazing. Yeah. They told themselves it is a good sign. I am going to find out the cause of my illness and make the necessary progress. I remember, one somebody I knew, like whenever anything would fall off their hands, they would take it as a proof that, oh, my consciousness was not focused. And maybe thank God for making that thing spill. So that I realized that, my thoughts were not focused and I was just getting scattered. So that's also. Yeah, anything here? Anyone? So in this case, the example that I was sharing, in this case, it would be like, here mother is sharing, I'm going to find out the cause of my illness and make the necessary progress. So in this case, when, maybe one is working in the kitchen and somehow instead of being focused and being in the present moment, one gets again as we go, lost in the forest of thought, and something falls from the hand. So that, one can thank the situation, that thank you for letting me know that I was going astray, somewhere we are going in our thoughts and uh, losing the connection with the present moment. Hmm. Yeah, anything, anyone before we go forward? Okay, so I'm going to maybe again add on something here from Veda of the body. So here he talks about the ordinary way and spiritual way. It's a long 3-4 pages, but maybe I can, yeah, take up a few paragraphs just to, in connection with what we were reading, the right attitude or cultivating the right attitude. So he says the spiritual way, of facing stress in general, if there is any stress either in life or related to the body. The spiritual perception recognizes that man is more than body and the ego. It sees man as a soul that is upon earth for a progressive experience towards a higher perfection. Thus, it does not cancel the evolutionary law, but gives it a higher meaning and purpose that transcends the limited scope of ego. Above all, it sees that and feels that a power and consciousness exist that far exceeds our limited consciousness and thus opens the possibility of help and intervention from a higher dimension. So that's why we pray, whenever we are feeling helpless in life, that we somehow have. Page number is 212. I started from 212. Further, the spiritual vision does not confine life to the narrow cabin of one body, but lives in a wide universal vision of the same I in all beings. So in Vedanta, we say that there is just one self. There are no two selves. Just one self is there. So he says that spiritual vision does not confine life to the narrow cabin of one body, that I am just this, but lives in a wide universal vision on the same I in all beings, and the same I assuming many forms and bodies for growth and experience through lifetimes. So having a kind of a certitude and knowing that I'm not ending if the body is ending. That's the spiritual vision. That cannot bring you a lot of fear, because usually with any illness there is a lot of fear. Oh my God, what would happen to me? Because we are so identified with the body. But if we have any degree of this vision that I'm not just this body, I go on, I don't die, then one cannot be so serious and deadly about if one is going to leave this body dead. Or one has loved ones, who are leaving or crossing further. One realizes in a wider vision that the journey still goes on. If this jacket is taken off, another jacket will be taken over soon. So that is the spiritual vision. Therefore, the spiritual view of life is a radical departure from the ordinary mental and narrow egoistic way of seeing, understanding, and living. That how fearful we become with every illness we get or any trauma that we face. That's not the spiritual view. And then he says that one thing needs to be clarified. The spiritual way of life is not just the passive and quietest self-negating way that I do not exist, that this is nothing. It's not that. True, the inner poise of spiritual man is full of peace and quiet, which comes naturally to him as he begins to live impersonally and universally. But externally, he can engage himself in the most demanding work, included, as is asserted by the Gita, in the bloodiest of war. Like we have an example of Sri Krishna, in fact, letting Arjuna fight, come on, take a stand and fight. It's not that being spiritual is letting go of arms and not taking the stand. This peace, the inward peace, in fact becomes the basis of a much powerful action than the person would be otherwise capable of. When one knows that I do not die, then one can really courageously stand up for the right cause. Otherwise, usually we are not able to even stand up for our causes which we feel that we have to take a stand because of fear. What would happen to me? This little me, the bodily self. So because of that fear, we are not able to take stand. So he says that peace, in fact, becomes the basis of a much powerful action. Yeah. Yeah. Anything here? Anyone wants to add on? Yeah. Okay, I'll just read a little bit more, and then wherever you have anything, please let me know. We can take reflection. So he says that there are two ways of facing stress, any kind of stress, either a physical illness or any outward stress: knowledge and power. So either I face it with knowledge or I face it with power. And he says that the spiritual way of knowledge is not so much through analysis as by intuition and inspiration. So, the little mind, the limited mind, logical mind that we have, usually in our ordinary consciousness, we will make a list and take the pros and the cons. Okay, if I go for this therapy, what are the pros? If I go for this therapy, what are the cons? Like that we calculate. Okay, what is the age in kind of, how long will I live in this therapy? What about this? What are the statistics so far? What is the research? So that is the logical, ordinary way of deducting, deducing that what is the possible way forward for me. But the spiritual way is not so much through analysis. So it is by intuition, inspiration, and illumined revelation. So one just gets to know that I know that I have to go this way. There is no logical calculation that you have done. You just know it. That is our intuitive knowing. It does not weigh the pros and cons of one possibility against another as much as it chooses by an intuitive discernment. So there is already a intuitive discernment present in us if only we can make the mind quiet and silent and be open to that intuition. So that is how uh, spiritual advice works, that the guidance that comes from within. Yeah, just something more, and then we can take some reflection. So he says that spiritual understanding, evaluation, and appraisal is therefore very different. It even in its method, it uses brain stilling rather than brainstorming. So found it very funny. you know. So as we were discussing, first quietening the mind, silencing the mind, and then waiting for the right guidance to come in. Not like storming the mind up, which we usually do when we are having meetings and discussions. What is the way ahead? So faced with a problem or difficulty, the spiritual man does not rush to collect all available data and strategies. Usually this is what we find ourselves doing mostly, that okay, if this is the thing that I have got, maybe cancer or anything, okay, what is the statistics, what are the therapies that have worked, and what is the life, whatever, expectancy in this one, so that's how mostly we find ourselves dealing, and that's why we feel so lost. We don't know whether what we are doing is it the right thing to do, should I be doing this, confusion is there. So he says that if one is spiritually turned, then spiritual man does not rush to collect all available data and strategies. He rather remains quiet and still, very still, attuning himself to a deeper truth within. He waits for receiving the inner guidance, the subtle indication from his own higher consciousness. If only we can allow ourselves to take such kind of pauses, and not rush through decisions. Yeah, and then he talks about a method given by uh, Sri Aurobindo, method where he shares that brain stilling is better than brainstorming. Yeah, I can read that later, but if there is anything, we can take it. Yeah, anyone? Maybe our brains are stilled. Yeah, anything? Anyone before we move forward?
Yeah, nothing new, and yet it never stops to amaze me how where I say I want to be, and yet what I'm doing and where it's taking me, right? Like where my intelligence, like what you were discussing, if something happens, you weigh the pros, you cons, you do your research, best doctors, best hospitals, best thing, take everything is so much doing, and that further, I don't know, it further stresses me. It further, I mean, it's just so much chaos that I create. And yet, if somebody stops me and asks me, what are you wanting? I would say, I just want peace, but I don't seem to find it, right? And I'm doing so much. And yet, when you hear something, it's like, what, how, right? Like, it just, it's so simple that it feels that something is wrong, must be wrong with it. It cannot be this simple, right? Like, hard to believe it's so simple. Okay, be still and you'll be shown the way. Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Yes, Arpit, please.
Hello, can you hear me? Oh yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for this talk. Yeah, no, I just agree with whatever we're discussing. The whole concept of like modern medical science of which is based on your results and um, empirical knowledge, and like how it's always progressing ahead, but there's always like the limitation of like research and experiments and what's been proven and what's not been proven and all that. And also like I guess like there's always been these practices that like inner healing and other kinds of healing. So yeah, it's always been there. Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say that this is important to I guess like from a mainstream point of view, it's very much like there's no like you can't even talk about anything other than the scientific method, the commonly accepted, clinically trialed, peer reviewed, all that. That's the only kind of language that you can speak in. If you speak anything outside of these lines, you will be ridiculed, you'll be mocked, you'll be like banned, and all that sort of stuff. Because like for example, you can't say that what is a virus. Like you can't say virus is something which is like a vibration. You can't just say that, because what is a vibration? You have to prove it. You have to, you can't say that it's just a materialization, like the mother said. It's a materialization of a imprint of some kind of a vital vibration. It's originates in a vital domain, and then it kind of um, sort of condenses down. So, but we're not allowed to talk about that because you can't prove it unless you have experience of it, obviously. But you can't show it to anybody. So yeah, no, just wanted to talk about that.
Yeah. I think nowadays science is slowly expanding, and expanding its terminology and definitions and language also. Because I remember when I was doing my own research there, at during those times, I was wondering if someone is doing uh, behavior research, or working with emotions, trying to understand them. And there were actually good labs. Now there are even more where people are working with understanding emotions and how emotions are impacting our health, and even the field of quantum physics opening us to our interconnectedness, that how there is quantum entanglement and people even far away, their thoughts are connected, their consciousness is connected. So even quantum physics or science now, I think there is no other way, as Sri Aurobindo says, that either we trace the truth by the spirit or we trace it through matter, truth is one. So ultimately, sooner or later, we will boil down to one table and agreeing and understanding each other. Yeah, but yeah, of course, I see that there is limitation of language and how much one can take because many a times ego is associated. There is also this story of what we were discussing many sessions ago, Jane Goodall, where the first time she researched that, oh my God, chimpanzees can also make tools. And it was not accepted, as you were sharing, that people ridicule. It was not accepted by the scientific community that it is not possible, that human being is the first animal or, the thing that who could make tools. But then her research, no one could disprove because she lived with chimpanzees and she recorded that yes, they can make tools, they have emotions, they can feel depressed, they can feel happy, they too have feelings. So initially, that was also not taken up with a lot of agreement. There was a lot of discord there. Yeah, as is with anything new. Yeah.
Yeah, so I agree with that. Just wanted to say one thing though, that now, like you talk about quantum mechanics, and yes, like all those things have been there for 10, 20 years, something like that. People have made those discoveries, everything, like we know everything. But the way that science and modern medical science and system is currently running is that you can't really talk about alternatives. You can talk about it, but you'll be labeled as, one of those guys, or he believes in alternatives and all that kind of stuff. He believes in alternative therapy, whatever, pranic healing, Reiki, whatever, spiritual healing. Because research is going on, right? Like everybody knows that there's quantum entanglement and there's lots of research going on distant healing and all that. Like even Dabar was doing research on these kinds of things with practitioners. But right now in the common day-to-day life, like I can't go to my doctor and tell them that, hey guys, look, I don't need this COVID vaccine because I'm dealing with, I'm looking at it in a different way. So I'll be safe, my immunity will be good because I'm doing this and this. They'll be like, no, that's not allowed, because what's allowed is that's what the system says, what the rules and regulations are. So in terms of COVID-19, you need to have a vaccine, you need to have a specific kind of vaccine. It has to be taken after a certain time. All those things have to be followed. There are exceptions, but exceptions are once again have to be certified by a doctor based on their own procedures. So all of those obstacles are there. So yes, while we do talk about what's going on in the medical science, and like a few people will be talking about it, like Deepak Chopra will be talking about it, but in common day-to-day life, that is kind of like you'll be laughed at if you talk about that.
Beautiful. Yeah. And the thing is that I think it tests my conviction. It is a test of my conviction that, okay, people may be laughing at me, people may be ridiculing me, but am I so convinced that no, I want to walk this way? That's the proof of my conviction because if it's a higher intuition, if it's something that I know I have to do, then whether people laugh at me or it makes no sense, somehow I am so stubborn that I will do it. So I think it's a test of my stubbornness, test of our convictions, that how sure are we about the path that we are going to take. Like, I know many people who have so far, as you were sharing, that vaccination is mandatory and even in aeroplanes and everywhere you require it. Many people have gave in. I saw them giving in. Many people did not give in so far. You know. And now we are hearing even reports about the person, doctor who started initially the idea of vaccination, that he himself is now confused that whether it was a good idea or not a good idea. Yeah. So I feel it's a test of our own convictions also, having people who are opposing us, so called. Yeah.
And one thing, that I was feeling when Arpit was sharing was that it really also depends on where I'm standing, right? So if I'm standing right now in a group of people who believe in pranic healing, they will laugh at the ones who are going to the doctors for conventional medicine. So because what I am and what I know is relative, who's laughing at who, it really does not matter. The question is, why am I standing there and watching who's laughing and why, right? If I feel something strongly, it really depends on, how, again, what you were just sharing, the conviction that whether I believe in it or not, because I did this just because, I would be ridiculed or laughed at. I obviously can believe in that. And yet there is a place where one is so sure. And this laughing thing, again, I know it was just a way of communicating, but how we are always, seeking that yes from everybody. Yes, you are doing it right. Yes, you are doing it. Yes, 4 billion people have got vaccinated, for example. I don't know the number, I'm just throwing it out there. But the thing is, that doesn't make it right. Numbers, just because, and that's what we do, right, in our lives. We hear it so often, especially in India. I've heard it often. Sabhi to kar rahe hain. We are all doing it. Everybody is doing it. Everybody is doing it. Who is this everybody? You and I make everybody, and we have no other reason to be doing it. And the only reason is everybody is doing it, so you also do it. So at times I wonder who was the first person who started doing that. I've questioned this to my parents. Then tell me who decided, right? Like left is better or right. And now it's become a process. So I must question that who is this everybody? Why does having number on your side make something good? Because if I'm factually looking at things, what everybody is doing doesn't seem to be working, right? Like the stress in everybody's life, the anxiety, it's become so common, the therapies. So if I want to be that, yes, I can very well do, okay, yes, everybody is doing, I do, but then remembering that then I must give up the things that I think I want. Yes, please. You don't have to raise your hand. You can just unmute and yeah, please.
Yeah, no, I agree with whatever you were saying and Monica is saying. The point that I wanted to make was not that somebody's laughing at you or whatever. Like I don't really care about somebody's laughing at me or whatever, right? That's okay. Anybody can laugh at me. The point that I'm trying to make is that because you can't even talk about these things right now with your doctor that, okay, can I get rid of, I don't want to take this vaccine. Can I not take it? Well, that's not a possibility for some people. Well, a lot of people actually over here. I don't know about India, but I know about Australia, Canada, US, that mandatory vaccinations vaccinations became mandatory for most of the people. If you want to go to like your workplace, for example, if you work in an office, if you're out in the public, maybe, grocery shopping or whatever, like a lot of places were asking for your vaccination. So it was like almost impossible to get out of it. If you like want to get an exception, then you have to be proven by a immunologist that okay, we've done your tests and the results have come back. Yes, you are allergic. Yes, you are this, that. Yes, an adverse reaction has taken place. All that nonsense. So it's literally impractical. Like it's impossible not to get a vaccine. And at that time, yes, people have, since that time the whole issue has gone away. But at that time, it was like impossible. Like you just can't survive without taking a vaccination. If you want to live in this community, like for example, if you want to travel outside, like even if you want to leave the country, you needed to get a travel exemption because you're not vaccinated. If the government doesn't regulate it, the airlines regulate it. So either you need to get a vaccination certificate or you need to get a PCR test 24 or 48 hours before. So yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous, right? That's what I'm just saying, that the whole thing,
Yeah.
you should be given. It's like one thing I don't understand is if what's the point of making it mandatory? If somebody wants to protect themselves, they can take it. If the vaccine works, it should help them. So like the whole thing was like, yeah, I mean, it was like a big thing. And as you said, like at that time, what was happening was that there was this fear in the whole society, and people were getting anxious. Oh, like I've got COVID, and what's going to happen? I need oxygen, and everybody saw the news, and we heard from people. And I think, like Dr. Alok was also mentioning in his talks, that it was what they found was that it was the panic and the fear that kind of rose up at that time, which was kind of creating this kind of a hyperimmune response in a lot of people. And mix that up with, obviously, like the conditions that we see in urban cities these days, like overcrowding, and everybody's living in their congested little spaces, and there's not enough contact with nature, and busy schedules and everything. Like it just kind of became, like those places became the centers of explosion of these kinds of incidents. And like it was also something that the media also, you could say, like how much they played a part in this, because like from day one you could see like there was such a panic. Every single channel was talking about COVID-19 every single day, 24/7. It was like, oh god, this and that, and now that, and now this, and then the lockdown. I mean, I don't know about India wasn't there wasn't a lockdown for that long, but over here we had a lockdown for almost like 1 year. So like ridiculous amount of time just
Yeah,
giving
I
out
think
this.
I think yeah, our attention is going just too much into what is happening outwardly, and I think we were talking about the spiritual way, where we were discussing that the spiritual way, no matter whatever is the outer situation, yes, government may be responsible, countries may be responsible, pharma companies may be responsible. Totally agree with you, but even then, the spiritual attitude, if I want it, if yeah, either I can take the ordinary way of living life, which is always trying to blame others, put the responsibility on others, which is the ordinary way which we were discussing, or right now we are trying to make a shift, that the ordinary way makes me disempowered. Talking about what governments do or did, that doesn't give me empowerment. It drains my energy. It makes me bitter. It makes me resent people. Now we are talking about a way which is a little higher, which is harmonious rather than dividing. Because this way is very dividing. That look, these are the people who did that. How ridiculous, how sad. You are right that they did that. But the thing is now accepting that this is the situation. What is the best possible attitude I can take? Can I make the shift within? I'm not able to make the shift outside right now. Can I make the shift within, or do I want to remain bitter, and the bitterness will further lead to complications here in the body? What do I want, since we are talking of the body? These resentful emotions, resentful thoughts, ill will, thinking in a divisive, separative way, like word versus me. This is the very cause of many, many illnesses. So whether I want to be in that space, now we have to make a choice. It's like a leap of, something I have to make. That okay, it's very easy to be there and keep cribbing, complaining. Yes, we have all done that. We do that from time to time. But do I now want to do something different with my life, or do I want to remain the same? That's the question. That's why mother says it's not for everyone. Everyone may not be ready to make the shift. Okay, if you are ready, they say, jump on, join the journey. So I think it's very important to stop here and pause, because it's not going to lead me anywhere. This discussion about what people did and what they could have done, and how I am the victim of situation. That's not the attitude mother is talking of. Sri Aurobindo is talking of. And since you are connected with Mother and Sri Aurobindo, let us take their words really truthfully, as they say that their words are not teaching, their words are a force in action. So can I let that force act on me? Very, very important. So that's why I think let us give it a pause here and let their words bring a change in our transformation in our attitude. I think we can also have the capacity there. We can use all this energy which I can take to discuss outward situations. I can use the same energy to make the shift within. And then it would have a greater power. Then I would be one different individual which could spill over some peace, joy, and progress around, rather than spilling around, cribbing and complaining, which every next person is doing. So let us, take the highest possible attitude with Mother Sri Aurobindo is talking about. Yeah, Priyanka.
Yeah. So just a sec. Sorry, there was a lot of echo sound. So
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So since we've taken an example of COVID, so I would talk about that. So we talked about COVID, and we said that Arpit just said that if if my personal choice is not to take the vaccine, why should I not be allowed that? Fair enough. Why should I not be allowed that choice? We do understand, we all know that COVID was a pandemic. And while we are reading about this, all this about the spiritual aspect, about the vibrations and how a virus is, everything in this universe is a vibration, including you, me, whatever. Because everything is made up of atoms and atoms are constantly vibrating. That vibrating atom is manifesting in different ways, in different forms. And science knows about that. So there is no denial of that. uh, why did we not have the choice? Why of not taking the COVID vaccine? In a simple way, I would like to just put my point is that, as you also said, that everybody was panicking. There were fears. So, because everybody was panicking and there were fears, and people do not have that control within themselves, so they better take vaccine because that is easier way. When something has spread on a pandemic level, and we know that in the entire universe, in the world, let's say, everybody is at a different level of consciousness. Even when we are reading about this thing, doesn't mean we have risen high in consciousness, because reading about all this gives us just information. And on the basis of information, if I go in the outer world and I say, look, this is it, and this is how, if I go and say a doctor that this is it and I choose to do this, then when I haven't worked on my own self, then my own words, when they come out of my own mouth, don't sound that convincing. That conviction we are lacking because we haven't gone through that experience ourselves. When we are a living example, then there is no need to say. And then that living example itself, everything spreads from there. And this I am saying because this is something that I have seen around me happening. So when you say that people ridicule, when you talk about it, there would be people ridiculing every new thing or something that they are not aware of, something that is not in their knowledge, not in their understanding. They will ridicule. But what we are talking about, I won't say it is new. Maybe it is new to them. But I think I've lost the thread. I don't know what I wanted to say. There's so many things, coming to my mind, and I don't know how to put them all together. But also that people watching, as Arpit was talking about, that media was showing this and that. But who is making that choice to even continuously watch that? Who? Why? Because our belief is so much on that. Are we sitting down and working on our own self? Are we going inside, working our own self? people living in fear, people panicking. So if that panic, if with that fear, where is the strength within? Where is the immunity within me? If it is not there, might as well take the COVID vaccine. And how does the government know who is in which level of consciousness? So a rule has to be there. That is for a bigger, and also, if I have worked enough on myself, whether I take a vaccine or whether I not take a vaccine, it is equal for me. And I'll tell you, there were people who took vaccines, and with just the vaccine, they had such side effects. They were on bed for 2-3 days with high temperature, with this and that, so many symptoms. Because before they went to take the vaccine, they were living in so much fear. Oh my God, what will happen? All kinds of things in the mind. And with that, when you go and take the vaccine, obviously you are already in a lower immune system. You are already vibrating at a lower frequency. You are that virus which has been given into your body as a vaccination, which is at a lower level, to induce a certain kind of reaction. Now it is because you are vibrating at a lower frequency, that little virus is still overpowering your immunity and creating those symptoms in you when it should not. But how do we educate people? We don't have to. We have to just work on our own self, and things will be taken care of. And there were people, and I would say many illiterate people. I read of a news where it said that one woman took both the vaccine, that Covaxin and Covishield. एक आम में एक और दूसरी आम में वो, and everybody was like, oh my God, what will happen? She was totally oblivious of the fact that कुछ क्या मतलब vaccination, and totally, some villager. Nothing happened to her. So ये भी है. Sometimes not knowing is a bliss. Sometimes knowing little bit होता है ना, वो अधजल गगरी छलकत जाए. तो तो गगरी को पूरी भरनी है, खाली करनी है या भरनी है, whatever, whichever way you want to look at it. So I personally feel that the world is ready. I mean, it's always been ready. There have always been all kinds of people. But I see when we talk about these things, it is not that it is ridiculed. The people are looking at alternative, they have gone through all the routes, done everything. And when it's come back to a full circle, they've realized this is not working. Can I not just try this? And this has, and when it works even a little bit, it brings a certain kind of belief, a faith, a trust. And as Mother says, finally, it is the trust, it is the belief that works, whether it is in medicine, whether it is in that medical science, with not trying to belittle medical science or medicines, because yes, they are an important part and they have a very, very big role. But when it crosses the line, then I mean, everything where it has a boundary. When it starts crossing that line, then it becomes too much. Because if you go to a surgeon these days, then he would always recommend surgery. So that is where I feel that is where it is unnecessary. A vocal nodule है, vocal cord में voice abuse से एक nodule हो गया है, तो उसको काट के हटा दो. ठीक है, हटा दो. फिर तुम्हारी voice पे तुमने काम नहीं की, तो फिर से होएगा. How many times are you going to cut it and go on scarring your vocal cords? But there are also the other extreme. There are also doctors who would not do unnecessary intervention also. And that is the balance that we all have to, work towards. Medical science, the doctors, and I don't know, I don't like calling it an alternative medicine. That why should we call Ayurveda or, allopath, any other Siddha healing or whatever as alternative? Everything is just, it is. So I don't even want to say that word alternative medicine, but if we want to make each other understand, then why? Medical science has its own, and so has everything else. But it is easy to take a pill, pop a pill, and quickly, because today's world, it is all about quick fix. We are so much in a hurry. Where is the time to work on ourselves? When we have pain, all we want is to take a pill and be quick and go back to work or whatever. But वो belief अपने अंदर काम करेंगे तो क्रिएट होगी, फिर उसको बर्दाश्त करने की भी हमारे अंदर ही हिम्मत आएगी, और फिर उसी कन्विक्शन से फिर हम बाहर की दुनिया में जब बात करेंगे तो हमारी बातों में हमारे अंदर ही वो वजूद होगी, हमारे शब्दों में वो वजन होगा जो दूसरे में भी प्रभाव डालेगा. सो दैट इज व्हाट वी हैव टू वर्क ऑन. दुनिया तो बोलती रहेगी, सब बोलते रहेंगे, बट कोई तो उसमें होता है जो लीडर बनता है, जो अपने ऊपर काम करके पूरे दुनिया को रास्ता दिखाता है. तो हम सबको अपने ऊपर ही काम करना है. Yeah, so this is I can go on talking, but I think I should stop
Thank you.
here.
Yes, Priyanka. Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's quite resonating. Yes. Thank you for sharing it. Yes.
Thank you.
I'm just going to read a bit what we were reading earlier. After that, I was reading from Dr. Alok Pandey, and after that, he gives a paragraph from Sri Aurobindo himself, where he talks about the two methods, brainstorming and brain stilling. So he's talking about that. So just quoting Sri Aurobindo, difficulties and perplexities can never be got rid of by the mind brooding on them and trying in that way to get out of them. Again, we can take this topic that we were discussing, and he says that difficulties and perplexities can never be got rid of by the mind brooding on them and trying in that way to get out of them. This habit of the mind only makes them recur without a solution and keeps up by brooding the persistent tangle. It is from something above and outside the perplexities that the solution must come. Now, this resonates with what Albert Einstein said, that the same mind that is the creator of the problem, the solution doesn't come from the same level. It has to be a different dimension. And he also shares something similar, that it is from something above and outside the perplexities that the solution must come. The difficulty of the physical mind, not the true thinking intelligence, is that it does not want to believe in this larger consciousness outside itself because it is not aware of it. And it remains shut like in a box in itself, not admitting the light that is all around it and pressing to get in. So imagine, he's saying that there is light all around us and it's pressing to get in. But we are so rigid with our walls, narrow with our walls, that we are not letting it in. And that's why he talks about making the mind vast, open, relaxed, yet alert, porous, receptive. So he continues, he says that it is not a theory, but a constant experience and a very tangible one when it comes that there is above us, above the consciousness in the physical body, a great supporting extension, as it were, of peace, light, power, joy, that we can become aware of it and bring it down into the physical consciousness, and that at first for a time, afterwards more frequently, and for a longer time, and in the end for good, it can remain and change the whole basis of our daily consciousness. So I think what Alokda was sharing, I had shared it in a couple of groups, that we think that there is only limited narrow thinking there, or all the bad things that we are always talking of. But then he says that if I'm always tuned into that frequency, then I will never create a space for the higher uh, light and intelligence to dawn in. So he says that first I have to empty my cup. Sri Aurobindo also, we were reading in Synthesis of Yoga, he says first I have to empty the cup. If I keep my cup full of little ideas, perceptions, dogmas, my opinions, this is what I think, this is what it is, because my cup is full of that. how can the divine intelligence, how can the divine intuition come in this full cup? So first we have to actually, make effort to kind of really shake the cup and, clear the contents, know what are the contents, clear the contents. And when there is a still empty cup, then wait for the higher guidance. It's not that it is not available, but I have no space for tuning in because I'm always tuned into the wrong channel. So how can I say that no, the right channel does not exist? First, I have to empty myself of the wrong channel. Then I can tune into the right channel. If I enjoy the wrong channel, but I'm also calling it wrong, but I'm enjoying it, having some pleasure in it, some delight in it, then I cannot keep on claiming that no, the higher is not available, higher is not available. I am not available for the higher. That's the thing. So he says that as if it's like wanting to press in the light, but one is not available. And when we can get in touch, then we can first in glimpses like trickles. And then he says that that can become our basis of existence. Not only in trickles, but that is my root now. The need is to have an aspiration towards it. Make the mind quiet so that what we call the opening is rendered possible. If I always stick tightly to my opinion, then how would the opening be possible? So it's very, very important to let go of our whatever present ideas, opinions are. Very, very important, just to make it absolutely still. Even for some time, it may appear dumb actually, because we are so used to always keeping content in the mind that it may appear, have I gone dumb? Why am I not thinking? So that kind of a space also comes, where Sri Aurobindo in Letters on Yoga also talks to a couple of sadhaks about this, that it isn't something like, a dumb intelligence or intelligent dumbness, something like that he uses. So he says that it's a good space, this space that is created. So the need is an aspiration that yes, I would like to connect with the higher intelligence, make the mind quiet, so that what we call the opening is rendered possible. A quieted mind, not necessarily motionless or silent, just quiet. Though it is good if one can have that at will. So the moment I want it, and the mind is quiet. So this is what we discuss when we talk about Buddhist practices, that taming the monkey mind. To look at the thoughts and not to engage with the thoughts, keep sticking to the breath in the body. So that's a way of experimenting this muscle where I can direct the mind. Okay, now we can think, but now we have to stick with the breath. So it's like a way of taming the monkey mind. So he says that it's good that if one can have a quiet mind at will. So a quieted mind and a persistent aspiration in the heart are the two main keys of the yoga. Activity of the mind is a much slower process and does not by itself lead to these decisive results. It is the difference between a straight road and an approach through constant circles, spirals, or meanders. So, which one do we want to take? That's the question for us. And definitely, he stresses again and again, not only here, at many other places, that the activity of the mind, which we are constantly engaged in, that is not the way towards knowledge, true knowledge. Yeah. And just concluding it from my side, then later on we can take comments. By what Alokda shares after this passage, he says, this letter, referring to this one, which obviously refers to inner difficulties and inner change, can very well apply to outer difficulties too, since the one constant factor required to deal with all difficulties, either inner or outer, is an inner change. So whatever we were discussing, today, that outwardly there are issues, there are problems. He says that one thing common in outward or inner struggles is the inner shift in attitude, the inner change. That's common. That we can have a little bit control over. An inner poise of quiet strength and a cheerful optimism, full of trust and confidence, puts us in a much better state to face life than a state constantly ruffled by 1,000 things, restless as a leaf driven by the storm, or a rudderless boat tossing over the waves without any mooring. So again, I think we know that we have a choice. Now at least we know that we can make a choice. We want the straight road or the one that we are already following, which is a curvy, circular spiral. So this is what what the part that I was reading today was where he talks about the spiritual way, knowledge. So he takes it two aspects of it, knowledge and power. This was knowledge, quietening down the mind and taking towards the intuition route. But then also comes power, which we are not maybe today not because it's a little too much. Maybe next time we can take the power aspect. Again, the spiritual way, the second category. Yeah. So any last comments, any reflections we can take before we end? Anyone? Okay, so in case of no reflection, maybe we can take a moment in silence just to share and dedicate uh, whatever merit we may have generated through this collective reflection, insight, and discussion, or reading these words full of consciousness, just dedicating our merit to all the sentient beings, and may our hearts and minds be in peace, and may we have lots of progress and joy in life. Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining in.